you have to prepare like crazy. I mean, you have to prepare for your demise. Basically, you have to prepare as if your life depends on it. Especially with some of these big solos, or playing a concerto, for instance, you have to prepare. You can't just walk on stage and hope your nerves will hold up. You have to prepare for the nerves for your bow arm to be shot. So you have to plan out your entire piece, your bow arm, your strokes, especially the concertmaster solos. You have to prepare your breathing for playing these solos. Where am I in the breath when I'm starting the first note from Scheherazade? It's like I go through like a so that the beginning is starts immediately without any hiccup, that the stroke is perfect. And that's the other thing, is prepare for perfection, and then don't be surprised when it isn't perfect, because it never will be. But really, perfection is actually not attainable, but it's a really good goal. It's a high level goal of preparation.
Welcome to String Sessions, the Music Parent Podcast. I'm your host, Joanna Farrar, and it's my pleasure to introduce our guest today, New Jersey Symphony Concertmaster Eric Wyrick. Eric is on faculty at Princeton University and was a longtime member and leader within the Orpheus Chamber Orchestra. He is, of course, a fantastic chamber musician, soloist, and concertmaster with decades of experience, and in our interview today, he touched on some of the important skills he shares both with his young daughters, who are both young musicians, and with his students and their parents. In a few places, he demonstrates some technical ideas, so if you'd like to see what he's showing rather than just hear it, you can always click over to watch this interview on our YouTube channel. Please take a moment to subscribe, and if you like what we're doing, leave us a good review over on Apple Podcasts. Enjoy the show.
So thank you so much for joining us today. I am very happy to have our guest, Eric Wyrick, on today. And as you have heard, he has quite a prolific background in a number of different areas of the music world, both as a teacher and a performer. And he is also a colleague of mine. And it is my pleasure to have you on. So thank you, Eric, for being here.
My pleasure to be here.
It's lovely. So people have heard a little bit about what you do and your life as a concertmaster, but can you tell us a little about your musical background? How did you get started, and what were some of your musical influences that got you to where you are? Kind of your story a little bit.
Right. So my parents are both musicians. My mother's a pianist and a dancer, but not a great pianist. She was able to accompany us as kids, and she practiced with the kids. I started the violin when I was about 4.5, so it's coming up to 60 years that I've been playing the violin next year, so that's a milestone coming. Do I even remember that far back? Yes, I do, because I've had several children myself. I have 4 girls, all musicians, so the process of starting on the instrument, of practicing, of negotiating daily practice sessions and stuff like that is very fresh in my mind. It's still going on with my high school age kids. But so that was a big part of my life. My parents were totally dedicated to our musicianship. My brothers are both musicians. My brother Peter's a cellist with the San Francisco Symphony. My brother Jed is a pianist, but he's also a scholar and a professor in Chico in the California system, a professor of religion of all things. But that's neither here nor there. So so my parents were completely dedicated to their children and the training thereof. So we would on Saturdays we'd go to Juilliard I lived in Poughkeepsie, New York. We go to Juilliard from Poughkeepsie from when I was about 6 years old, and we did that every Saturday. both parents, or sometimes one or the other, but driving and staying the whole day waiting for us to be done, just like many parents are doing these days, and then take us home and then start the whole thing all over again. So that's through high school, and I studied with a legendary teacher named Dorothy DeLay, and for many, many years, and was fortunate enough to be in this class of extremely high functioning violinists, soloists, chamber musicians, concertmasters, all that came out of that class. So that was a big influence for me, having peers that are amazing, and the competitive aspect of it, but also the camaraderie and the shared experience of a certain school of playing, and aesthetic of violin playing that we all learned, and it was a wonderful time. After that, I sort of dropped off of the student track, and trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. So I spent actually a couple of years just practicing. I did some competitions, I did some auditions, and I got a job. I got a couple of jobs right away. I got the job in the New York City Opera violin section, and I also got a concertmaster job in Boca Raton. However, before I even showed up for that job, the orchestra folded. So I'm getting a taste of what it's like to be a musician, with the finances and so forth. But I did have a job. It was a seasonal job, City Opera, but it was a great base income for my future life, which became chamber music and leadership position. I play concertmaster here and there, off and on, but I'd be called as, I became known as a concertmaster, to be hired at a freelance basis, and put together a chamber music festival in East Hampton with a good friend of mine, and we did stuff like that, just sort of figuring out ways to play music on our own, until the reputation got going, and then I was called for to become a member of Orpheus Chamber Orchestra, and then I got a concertmaster job with American Symphony, and all the while I still had this City Opera job, which was steady income, health insurance, instrument insurance, that kind of thing, until I finally got the New Jersey Symphony job when I'm 40 years old. So I've been there for 39 years old. I've been there about 25 years now. So that's in a nutshell, that's my career as a violinist.
That is obviously a lot. And I think it's interesting to me, because one of the threads that seems to me to follow through all of that is something I think all professional musicians, we have to do to a certain extent, which is, as you were saying, like you make opportunities, or you find the opportunities to make music, to do what you need to do while having a bass, sure, of course, but like still there's the thread of, making your own opportunities, but also the thread of leadership, because obviously you were playing as concertmaster a lot, it sounds like, from a very early age. And I was curious, I wanted to kind of get to these questions later in the interview, but it sounds like it's coming up already. Do you feel like that experience of being comfortable in leadership positions was something that you had from childhood? Were there specific teachers that kind of helped to, encourage that ability? Or is it just something where you're like, yeah, it just kind of came naturally? It's what I always did.
No, I don't know. I mean, I was always playing in an orchestra. I also, by the way, I forgot to tell you, I from 14 years old, I got a job in the Hudson Valley Philharmonic. So I was playing in a section, symphony section at that point, and played in the section at Aspen every summer, chamber orchestra. These were really my best training opportunities, were playing with these groups. So, and the City Opera. So I would sit back and watch how things would work. and not with the idea that I'm getting a, I'm moving up, because I had no idea what was going to happen. You're sitting there, opportunities come, they go, failures happen all over the place. I did get early on, I got a concertmaster position at the New York String Orchestra seminar with Alexander Schneider. So that gave me an idea. Oh, I might be able to do that, and I think I was successful at it. I didn't know what I was doing, but I think it was successful. And then people would call me, and I'd do stuff. So yeah, it wasn't a dream of mine. Dream of being a soloist, violin soloist. But I don't think I ever really had the skill set for being a soloist, and I'm so happy I didn't, because that is a very difficult job, to be soloing and to be on all the time. And I'm on a lot, but that is even something, in another degree. Yeah, so things just sort of happened, and I had a belief in myself, of course, and I love the music. I think that's the key, is to love the music, and also to want to have the agency to make the music your own, and not just follow what someone else does. So that was a strong thing. And then when I became Orpheus, seemed to be the perfect job for that, because that's giving agency to every person in the section, and rotating leadership and stuff like that. So I was able to learn from really tremendous chamber musicians and soloists and concertmasters. So that's really my best training situation. So from that, I'm good. I can do it. I can lead anything up to a certain amount of players.
Sure, of course. Yeah, that's very interesting, and I have some other questions that kind of follow on from that. But I wanted to just mention: can you tell us a little bit about obviously we've talked about you're a concertmaster and chamber musician and these other hats that you wear. You are also a teacher. Can you tell us about where you teach and kind of what you've been doing with that, just so that so I have some questions about that.
Right. So I'm a lecturer at Princeton University. Have been for 8 or 9 years, I guess. And interesting that there's so many different levels of player in the as a Princeton teacher. So because I've had people that go on to grad school in music on their instruments, violin or viola. I've had people who are winning the competitions at the concerto competition at the school, and then they're going to go off and be a intern or whatever at Supreme Court justice or whatever, and then people who are in finance, and others who as a sophomore are invited to med school, and then they spend the rest of their time in Princeton trying to be a musician. So there really a lot of different levels, and it's fascinating, because I found out that at every level of play, we're basically talking about the same things to the student. And these are college kids, but it doesn't matter. It's like levels aren't based on your age. There's a certain maturity that happens, 12 or 13 years old, maybe you start getting interested in the process that you've been sort of pushed to do for the past 8 or 9 years as a violinist. But the levels are always the same, and need the same attention on a daily basis. And I encourage my students who are, they're there for academics and they don't have time to practice. I say, if you can every day do 20 minutes, you will be able to maintain your playing throughout your college years, because if you don't maintain your playing, you'll lose the skill that you've spent these 14, 16 years developing. So that I find that's my job. Try to inspire people to play 20 minutes a day, and then when we get to the lesson, to give them a really good workout on their instruments, because these people are also playing in orchestra, so they do have some structure, and are playing the violin, 2 or 3 times a week in orchestra. Some have chamber music also, but I maintain that you still have to do those 20 minutes in order for you to enjoy those other times. You can't just blindly go into something without having touched the violin or learn the music that you're playing. So
Yeah.
a couple of things.
Yes, quite a number of things. So you are primarily working with, with college age students. And as you said, students that are in a very rigorous academic environment, which means that while some of them may go on to be professionals or do something in the music world, they are also balancing an enormous amount of other responsibilities, which can be true for these days. I mean, school age kids are pushed in so many different directions too. And I think your advice already, that's wonderful advice so far. Are there other things that you find that you are frequently having to address with students? I feel like sometimes with teachers, we have things that we know when we have like a new student come in, we're probably going to have to address this sooner rather than later, either because it's a thing that we really enjoy working on or because it's a mistake that we see a lot of people making. Are there pitfalls that you frequently see that you have to address outside of you need to play 20 minutes a day?
Oh, sure. I mean, everybody, one of the hardest things to do is to employ or deploy vibrato. So it's something that, young kids need to be reminded constantly to vibrate. It takes a lot of effort. It's like if you're a swimmer, you have to be reminded to kick, and otherwise you're not going anywhere. And that's the hardest thing about swimming. Well, the hardest thing about, the constant hardest thing about playing the violin, I think, is vibrato. Is to have a good one, but to be able to use it and to use it intentionally, not automatically, but intentionally, and don't not vibrate, unless you're told to. But you assume vibrato. If you go into a stylistic you go into a stylistic conversation, there's still vibrato, even but used differently. So that's the first thing. The other thing is, I find that violinists have a very difficult time playing in the bottom third of the bow. So I happen to have a bow here, playing this part of the bow. Like, it's very easy to play from here to here because the bow arm works in a certain way like this, but once you have to then go into a bow change, this is one of the hardest things to do. And you can see it in professionals. You see people with a bow arm like this, and that's their bow change at the frog. I see it in our orchestra. I can look anywhere and see that. But to do this and to use this, 6 or 8 inches of bow is perhaps the most important skill. Now, using this last 2 inches of the bow here is also very difficult. So I spent a lot of time on bow changes, and especially at the frog, which then promotes a discussion of bow arm. So if the wrist is going too high, it's very difficult to make a good bow change, unless if you're a Russian bow arm and you're it's a certain thing. By the way, if it sounds great, I'm going to leave it alone. It's like whatever your bow arm is, if it sounds good, you don't mess with it, right? But usually, if it's not right, it doesn't sound that good. If you watch on YouTube, there's a masterclass with Ivan Galamian with Josh Bell. He's about 12 years old, and Ivan Galamian says, if your bow arm doesn't look good, it's not good. So he's complaining about Josh Bell's bow arm. It's the exact same bow arm he has. He shouldn't have complained because he sounded great, but he's on television. So you have to be judicious with your criticism. But
Sure.
generally, this is the thing. To get this motion is really difficult. What else? Another
Absolutely.
thing I'm still going on. Another thing that I find that most people are having trouble with is playing on the E string. And as concertmaster, I'm always on the E string, solos on the E string. So I had to figure out how to play on the E string. What I've decided is that if you're playing on the E string and this is your bow angle, you're in trouble because you have to hold the bow onto the string. So what I try to do is get the bow angle to be this, so more parallel to the floor. And now I can play without any effort. I can play just, without pressure, without tension. And then you make the high E string sound into, your favorite place to be because you know what you're doing up there. So those are the three things that I'm almost constantly do. I did a master class the other day, and young professionals, and I had those three things to say to people. It's no doubt. But if I'm talking to my daughter, who's a cellist, playing in the living room, I'm saying the same stuff to her on the cello. I mean, it doesn't quite apply, but a lot of it does. And she realizes when she finally realizes, oh yeah, that's right. She's starting to realize instead of saying, you don't know what you're talking about. So, but that's a maturity thing. That whether you're able to absorb the criticism or not is a maturity thing. That you just have to wait until they're ready to hear it. You just say the
Difficult
same.
for us adults sometimes too, though, I feel.
Oh, it's so true.
No matter the age. No, that's excellent advice. I think you're absolutely right. So that it ties a little bit into. So you did this master class, and that was with students that were young professionals and at that level. And as you mentioned, there were those issues that cropped up. You have, as you mentioned, one of your daughters is a cellist. When you are thinking about pitfalls that parents, per se, fall into when they are trying to help their young musicians, are there pitfalls that you've seen either with parents of students that you've taught or other parents that you've seen around, what your kids have learned that you wish you could get across? Because I know that it's not perfect. Just because we're professionals doesn't mean that, we can instantly know what's going to be appropriate for every child. But there are some things that are harder for people who are not inside of the world of learning something like a string instrument, which is particularly challenging.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as a professional musician, parent of young musicians, I think, first of all, there's a big advantage for the kid in that they get the message, the daily message, technical message every day. The disadvantage is, I can listen from 2 rooms away and say your bow is not straight, or that bow grip isn't going to make it. You can hear it, right? And that's just too much for a kid. It's like you can't have someone. It's like Big Brother or something. It's like you can't have someone monitoring your every bow stroke and hearing criticism. It's bad, right? And of course, both their parents are violinists, so they get double dose of it, which is double bad. But we've learned. I think we've learned to just let it go. Okay, whatever you do, just go practice. And the younger one is 14. She's a violinist and violist. She plays viola a lot, and that's a great thing, by the way. The more you can play viola, first of all, the more opportunities you have, but it's really good for your musicianship, and it's good for your technique to work on vibrato on the viola is a great thing for your vibrato on the violin, or the way to produce a sound on the viola, which requires a certain airiness to the sound and not as much pressure, perhaps, but to make a great sound on the viola is difficult. So if you can do that, it really helps your violin playing as well. Yeah. So for the amateur parent, not amateur parent, professional parent, musician, not musician. So there are certain cultures that are really good with producing violinists because the mom or the dad, but usually the mom, is there to monitor daily practice. And daily practice is probably the best equalizer of all. And parents have to be there to enforce it because I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I was getting out of practicing. At one point, my teacher says, "Oh, here, get a kitchen timer, and you do 20 minutes of practice, 10 minutes of break, right? 20, 10, and do that 4 times." So for the first week I did that, and I was getting pretty good. I remember I was playing Vinyavsky Polonaise, and it's really getting somewhere. And then after that, the dings would come sooner and sooner, so that at a certain point, that 20 minutes became 6 minutes with a 20-minute break, 25-minute break. I don't know if you did that too, but
time travel is possible. It is true. Yes. It's a miracle. It is a miracle. Yes. I may know something about something similar when I was a child.
And then the watching TV during. Well, any case, that's bad behavior is bad behavior. But if a parent is there, then it's a lot better. My best practice sessions were when my father would not say a word. He'd come and take a nap in my room and just listen to me play. Those are my best sessions, and all I do is play through Bach, play through my concerto. I wouldn't do much practicing, just play through. And he loved it, and wow, that was great. But you can't expect it. It's a lonely business playing the violin. You have to have help just to make it happen on a daily basis.
Yeah, that involvement is crucial, and whatever way that can be done. Which I think that balance for every family is different, whether they're, how knowledgeable they are about what is being learned, but still just the time and the involvement is really what's key. So yeah, that is very, very true. When you are, so because one of your young daughters is learning violin, I was curious, did you actually teach her yourself? You or your wife, or do you have other teachers? Because that is one thing that I think is interesting. And I've had other friends and guests on who had parents that were musicians, but decided, it's better if it's outside of the family. Like it kind of goes back to that, how involved can or should you be in the process, which is hard for parents of, whether they're musicians or not to navigate.
Yes, absolutely. We have other teachers. My daughter now is studying with my stand partner in New Jersey Symphony, Brennan Sweet, and he's a wonderful teacher. And just whatever you want. Yeah, what are you doing? Oh, that's good. Let it happen. It's really important. They have to find their way. They have to find their own.
Oh, of course.
Path. What, and I can't. They don't want to listen to me. They don't want to listen to my wife either. They just don't. The younger one especially, but the older one now is listening more and more. But still, young kids don't want to listen to their parents tell them, give it to someone else to do. You're paying someone else. Let them do it. They can be tough. They can be not tough. Whatever they need. Which the personality that works best with the kid for their learning is the one to have.
Yeah, absolutely. When you are working with students, this kind of goes back to your role as concertmaster and leader. Are there ways in which either, with your own kids or with students that you've worked with, are there ways that you have helped students build that kind of confidence or those leadership skills? Are there things that you think help young people to develop that as a skill? I mean, even within chamber music, I mean, if you're going to play first violin or anything where you're going to be asked to lead, those are important for all musicians. Are there certain things that you think are important to emphasize or that you have found help? Or is it just a matter of developing the technique and doing it?
Yeah, I don't know that I can influence their leadership. I mean, for example, my student this semester, I told her, here, let's prepare. No, it was last semester. Let's prepare Ein Heldenleben, because the orchestra was playing Strauss Ein Heldenleben, which has a huge violin solo. Let's prepare it. We'll work on it in the lessons, little by little, during this semester, and then you play for the music director and see what happens, because that's the audition process for that position of concertmaster playing this solo. So we had her work on the stuff. She didn't even practice that much, but very good player. And she played for the music director, and he basically had her play Heldenleben, and she played it. And it was great. She did great. Leadership of a big orchestra, I think that's something it's an experiential whatever. You can edit that out. What?
It's experiential.
Experiential, yes. Leadership at that level is experiential, and I don't know that I can teach it. I can give pointers for how to cue effectively, how to play, how to lead with your sound, and perhaps tell stories about other concertmasters and their experiences, which is very important. When one lesson which I've never really learned myself, as a soloist, my teacher said, when you talk to a conductor, this is Dorothy DeLay, she said, when you speak to you need the conductor to play faster or slower, you say, excuse me, maestro, and you walk up closely, and in a whisper you say, I need it to go a little bit quicker, please. So you don't, basically telling me that the relationship between a conductor and the orchestra is such that if you call them out, they're gonna not take it well. They're gonna be on the defensive, and so this is something I learned early on. Of course, I use that technique to call them out as a concertmaster all the time, because sometimes you just have to. You can't be bullied by these dudes, So I like to push back a little bit myself, but that's my problem, not yours.
No, but being aware of that's all part of being aware of, which both you learn from being told stories like that, but also then you learn by thinking about all these different relationships, and that's complicated. And I think you mentioned it earlier, which I think should go without saying, but sometimes I'm not sure people realize, there is an enormous amount of pressure when you're in a leadership position, whether that's, principal of any, section, particularly concertmaster though. And that involves dealing with nerves and dealing with being able to be under pressure, when things are difficult. Are there things that you feel help you to deal with nerves? Like, say, before you have to play Heldenleben or anything else like that, or just in general, are there ways that you have developed, I don't want to say a thicker skin, but just skills under pressure like that? And are there things that you might suggest to people to help deal with that?
Well, sure. I mean, I don't know if it goes without saying, but you have to prepare like crazy. I mean, you have to prepare for your demise, basically. You have to prepare as if your life depends on it, especially with some of these big solos, or playing a concerto, for instance. You have to prepare. You can't just walk on stage and hope your nerves will hold up. You have to prepare for the nerves for your bow arm to be shot. So you have to plan out your entire piece, your bow arm, your strokes, especially the concertmaster solos. You have to prepare your breathing for playing these solos. Where am I in the breath when I'm starting the first note from Scheherazade? You know, it's like I go through like a you know, so that the beginning is, you know, starts immediately without any hiccup. You know, that the stroke is perfect. And that's the other thing, is prepare for perfection, and then don't be surprised when it isn't perfect, because it never will be. But really, perfection is actually not attainable, but it's a really good goal. It's a high level goal of preparation. Of course, but then let it go, because otherwise you can't beat yourself up if you're not perfect. You just can't. But you can try to be perfect. It doesn't hurt.
Yeah. So prepare, and then prepare some more, and then.
Exactly. So and that's reminds me of something I tell my students. You know, why is my battery not working? I tell my students, you know, violin playing is 90% intonation, and the last 10% intonation.
No, that is excellent and very practical advice, which is that you're never going to feel that you're actually 100% prepared, but that just means you need to do more and then be willing to let it go once you get there. But yeah. Is there other pieces of advice that you feel you would like to share with young musicians or their parents? Partially, I think, are there things that you find important for motivating either yourself or that you've seen is very motivational for other students?
Well, again, you know, the motivation is fleeting. Discipline is key. And I mean, I think the most important thing is to practice at a time of the day that your brain is at its best. You know, use that half an hour or hour early on in the day. It's a very different thing than after your whole day is gone. You finished your homework. Now you're going to start practicing. You know. And because on a daily basis, if you're feeling guilty because you haven't done your work, if you feel it, you know, it builds on you. It's like 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock comes along, and it's like, oh, I should have practiced. I should be practiced. I should be, you know, this kind of mindset of feeling like you're not attending to your stuff, I think is really debilitating. And I think that's where mental health issues come, where you get yourself into a hole. It doesn't have to be about violin, about any work that you have to do, you know, if you're sitting in bed and scrolling through your phone, the day can get past you, and you'll just feel terrible. So I think mental health is really important for being inspired. You know, you have to be available to be inspired. You know, and your brain needs to be available. You're emotionally, you need to be available for inspiration, and then you can take advantage of so many things. That's a difficult lesson. That's a personal lesson that, you know, I'm still working on myself, but it's really important. It's very easy to tell someone else that, you know, oh, you should be doing this. If you did this, you'd be in great shape. I can't even do it myself, but I try, you know. So, but it's still something, you know, do as I say, don't do as I do. But it's still really important. Mental health is important, and you have to be in charge of your day to make that happen.
I think that is so true. Before we wrap up, and I have sort of like last questions I want to ask you. There are a lot of things that are tricky and challenging about being a professional musician, doing what we do, doing what you do. What is one of the things that you really love about what you do? What is something that you love about the career that you have, or the work that you get to do as a musician?
Well, getting completely immersed in the music that you're playing is a feeling like no other. I mean, I don't know where you can find that in any other profession. There's a certain joy that you get from just flowing with the music, and it's delightful. I mean, it's why I do it, especially in performance. But it happens in rehearsal too, assuming that they let it happen. They being those in charge, those conductors, But it's why we do it. I think the feeling of freedom, of just being going this way and that way, depending on where the music takes you, where the performance takes you, where the oboe soloist takes you, where the cello section is leading you, where the solo pianist is going. These details, the horns and the brass section, when they're right on and they're doing what they need to do, and you follow them, and immersion in the music is just the best thing.
It really is. I couldn't agree more. And I wanted to ask, last but not least, for people who are now, so interested in what you do. I know what an amazing player you are. I know a lot of other people do as well. Where can people find you? Where can they listen to your stuff and things of that nature, outside of coming to hear New Jersey Symphony and getting to hear you there? But
right. Well, yeah, I don't have a website. I don't attend to my, social media. I'm just not interested, really. But I do have a lot of things on YouTube. There's a Busoni concerto, which is not a video, it's a recording from a radio broadcast that I'm really proud of, on YouTube. If you put in my name, and Naomi Yarvi is conducting, so that's something you can put his name in as well. And when you put my name up, a whole bunch of recordings come up. I mean, we did so many during the pandemic, and it's all on YouTube, and some of them are good. The quality, sound quality isn't necessarily good. They're a little bit dry sounding sometimes, made with the iPhone. But I don't know. Those things need to be edited, frankly. But you can see me there. I've got a lot of stuff.
Absolutely. I will put all of those links in the show notes so that people can find you. And that is really wonderful. So thank you, Eric, very much for your time. I'm sure that everyone who's listening is appreciative as well. And I hope we will come up with other reasons to have you back on so we can talk more.
Joanna, it's been a pleasure talking with you.
I deeply appreciate Eric's dedication to the work of a concertmaster, a very high-pressure role, as well as his love of teaching, which I think came across in our discussion. I couldn't agree more with him that mental health, being able to manage our time well, in order to truly prepare thoroughly for the joyful but also very stressful work of performing, is one of the crucial skills for young musicians and their parents. Students today can get pulled in so many directions by life and schoolwork, and for adults, by the many, many roles we all play in our lives. And making time to get to practice early and often each day helps us lessen feelings of overwhelm, while also developing confidence and healthy balance in life. Ultimately, as he pointed out, you prepare and you prepare and you prepare early and often, and you aim for perfection, but in the moment, it's just a matter of letting go and being in that moment. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please take a moment to share it with a friend or leave us a good review on Apple Podcasts, which really helps. And you can always reach out to chat with me via Instagram. I am at Joanna Farrar 802, and I love to chat with people about the show and music in general. You can also, of course, find more on our website at www.musicparentpodcast.com or on my personal website, joannafarrar.com. Thanks for joining us. Happy practicing, and I will see you next time.